The penthouse ballroom hung suspended above Manhattan like a glass coffin filled with the living dead. 40 floors below, the city pulsed with the ordinary rhythms of ordinary lives. Subway cars rattling through tunnels, lovers arguing on fire escapes, night shift nurses counting pills under fluorescent lights. Up here, in this cathedral of crystal and cruelty, the air was so thin it could cut your lungs. Elara Vance pressed her spine against the floor-to-ceiling window, feeling the cold glass through the threadbare fabric of her dress. $20. That's what she'd paid for this illusion at a thrift shop in Queens. A black cocktail dress that had looked almost elegant under the store's forgiving lighting. Here, surrounded by women draped in silk that cost more than her annual salary, she felt like a weed that had somehow sprouted through marble. She shouldn't be here. The invitation had arrived at the hospital where she worked as a records clerk, addressed to valued community partners. A corporate gesture, she'd realized too late, away from Moretti Industries to claim they'd extended their gala to the little people. She was set dressing for someone else's philanthropy. Her champagne had gone warm in her hand. She hadn't taken a single sip. Around her, conversations flowed in that particular dialect of wealth. Vacation properties mentioned casually, art acquisitions were debated with theatrical boredom, and names were dropped like bombs designed to establish hierarchies. Everyone here knew the secret language, the invisible codes. Everyone except her. Oh my God, is that polyester? The voice sliced through the ambient noise like a blade through butter. Elara's stomach dropped before she even turned to face its source. Vivienne Ashworth. Old money wrapped in new venom. Elara recognized her from the society pages she sometimes glimpsed at the hospital, pages left behind by wealthy patients who came to the clinic for cosmetic procedures they'd never admit to needing. Vivienne stood in a red Valentino gown, her lips curved into a smile that never reached her ice-chip eyes. Flanking her were two other women, equally polished, equally predatory. A hunting party in couture. I didn't realize the catering staff was allowed to mingle, Vivienne continued, her voice pitched to Carrie. Nearby conversations quieted. Heads turned. Someone should really speak to security. I was invited, Elara managed, her voice coming out smaller than she intended. She hated herself for it, for the tremor, for the instinct to shrink. Invited. Vivienne tasted the word like it was a particularly dry wine. How democratic. She stepped closer, and Elara caught the scent of perfume that probably cost more than a month's rent. You know, charity is wonderful, but there are limits. Some spaces simply aren't designed for. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. What happened next occurred in slow motion. Vivienne's elbow, deliberate, precise, connected with the arm of a passing server. A full glass of Bordeaux arced through the air, like blood from a wound, and landed directly on Elara's chest. The wine hit her like ice and fire simultaneously, soaking through the cheap fabric, staining it a violent crimson. She gasped, stumbling backward, and felt the window cold and unyielding against her shoulders. For one terrible second, silence. Then Vivienne laughed, a bright crystalline sound, and the room followed. Not everyone, but enough. Enough glittering socialites with champagne glasses raised like shields. Enough suits with shark-toothed smiles. The sound rose around Elara like floodwater, drowning her in its casual cruelty. Oh no, Vivienne said, her voice dripping with false concern. What a tragedy. I suppose that dress can just go back to wherever you found it. More laughter. Elara felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she would not, give them the satisfaction. She stood frozen, wine dripping from her ruined dress onto the pristine marble floor, creating a pool of humiliation at her feet. Just leave, she told herself. Walk to the elevator. Don't run. Don't let them see you break. But her legs wouldn't cooperate. She was pinned in place by the weight of 100 contemptuous gazes, a butterfly specimen, still alive, as the pin drove through its body. Then the laughter stopped. It didn't fade. It stopped, abruptly, completely, as if someone had pressed a mute button on the entire room. Elara became aware of a shift in the atmosphere, a change in pressure, like the moment before a summer storm breaks. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, bodies moving aside with an instinct that seemed almost involuntary. And through that human corridor he approached. Cassian Moretti moved away apex predators move, with an economy of motion that suggested devastating speed held deliberately in check. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a tuxedo that seemed less like formal wear and more like armor. His dark hair was swept back from a face that could have been carved from granite if granite could smolder. But it was his eyes that stopped Elara's breath entirely. Dark as bottomless wells, they held a cold intelligence that seemed to calculate everything in their path. When they landed on her, wine-soaked, trembling, humiliated, she felt herself weighed and measured in a single glance. He did not look at Vivienne. He did not acknowledge the crowd. He simply crossed the remaining distance to where Elara stood, pressed against the glass. "Come here," he said. His voice was low and commanding, with an accent she couldn't quite place, something European softened by years in America. It was not a request. Before Elara could respond, before she could even process what was happening, Cassian Moretti sat down in the nearest chair, a velvet throne that seemed to have materialized for this exact purpose, reached out, and pulled her onto his lap. The room held its breath. "Would you like me to write Elara's internal monologue during this moment of shock?" The world narrowed to points of contact, his thighs beneath hers, solid as oak. His arm wrapped around her waist, steadying her. The wool of his tuxedo jacket rubbed against her bare shoulders, the heat of his cutting through the chill that had soaked into her bones. Elara's brain short-circuited. She was sitting on the lap of Cassian Moretti, the man whose name appeared in whispered conversations and screaming headlines with equal frequency. The man who had built a shipping empire from nothing, who was rumored to have connections that made politicians nervous and mobsters polite. The man who, if the tabloids were to be believed, had never been photographed smiling. He was not smiling now, but there was something in his expression, a controlled fury, that seemed directed not at her but at the room around them. "Mr. Moretti," Vivienne's voice cut through the silence, suddenly stripped of its venom, now honeyed with desperation. "I'm so sorry, I didn't realize she was with you." Cassian's voice was quiet, but it carried like thunder. "Don't speak." Vivienne's mouth snapped shut. Elara could feel the shift in the room's energy, the way power had been redistributed in an instant. Moments ago she had been prey. Now, sitting on the lap of the city's most dangerous man, she was something else entirely. Something no one in this room dared to define. Cassian's arm tightened around her waist, drawing her closer. His lips brushed her ear, and Elara felt electricity cascade down her spine. "Breathe," he murmured, so quietly that only she could hear. "They're watching. Don't let them see you shake." She drew a trembling breath. His scent enveloped her, expensive cologne underlaid with something darker, something that smelled like smoke and secrets. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered back, barely moving her lips. "Because I need something from you." His voice was silk over steel. "And you, I suspect, need something from me. We'll discuss terms. But first." His gaze swept the room and Elara watched as every person it touched seemed to flinch. "We perform." His hand came up to cup her cheek, turning her face toward his. To the watching crowd, it must have looked intimate, tender, a lover's gesture. But his eyes, locked on hers, were calculating. "Follow my lead," he said. And then, loud enough for the room to hear, "Forgive my fiancé's late arrival. She was detained at the hospital, saving lives, I believe, rather than merely spending inherited fortunes." The silence cracked into shocked murmurs. "Fiancé?" Elara's heart stopped. Started again, raced like it was trying to escape her chest. She started. Cassian's thumb traced her lower lip, silencing her. "Don't contradict me. Not here." His gaze flickered to Vivienne, who had gone the color of old milk. "You. What's your name?" "Vivienne Ashworth." The socialite's composure had shattered completely. "Mr. Moretti, I assure you, it was an accident." "I'm sure it was." Cassian's smile was a blade. "But I have an excellent memory for accidents. And an even better memory for the people who caused them." He tilted his head slightly. "My shipping company handles a significant portion of your family's imports, doesn't it? Wine, primarily. Italian. French." The color drained from Vivienne's face entirely. "Perhaps," Cassian continued, "I should have my people review those contracts. Ensure everything is in order." It wasn't a threat. It was an execution. Social, financial, and absolute. "I'm so sorry," Vivienne breathed. "Please, I didn't. Get out of my sight." Vivienne fled. Her companions followed, a retreat of silk and shame, their heels clicking frantically against the marble as they made for the elevator. Elara watched them go, something shifting inside her chest. A door she'd kept locked suddenly rattling on its hinges. The crowd dispersed with studied casualness, conversations resuming at a deliberate volume. No one would meet Elara's eyes. No one would risk catching Cassian's attention. "Stand up slowly," Cassian murmured against her ear. "Take my hand. Walk with me to the private bar in the East Wing. And if anyone asks, you are madly in love with me." She stood. He rose beside her, his hand enveloping hers, and they moved through the crowd like royalty through subjects. The sea of bodies parted before them, closing behind, and Elara felt the impossible weight of every gaze on her back. The private bar was exactly that, private. A small room paneled in dark wood, lit by amber sconces, furnished with leather chairs, and filled with the kind of silence that money could buy. Cassian closed and filled the door behind them, and the sound of the party outside vanished completely. Elara rounded on him immediately. What the hell was that? Cassian poured 2 drinks at the bar, whiskey, neat, and handed one to her without asking if she wanted it. That was me preventing a social massacre and acquiring an asset in one efficient motion. Asset? Elara's voice pitched upward. You just told a room full of people that I'm your fiancé. I did. We've never met. We're meeting now. He gestured to the chair across from his. Sit. You're shaking, and I'd rather you not collapse before I've explained. Elara sat. The whiskey trembled in her hand. Cassian settled across from her, his long legs stretched out, his dark eyes assessing. In the intimate lighting, he looked less like a statue and more like a man. A dangerous man, certainly, but one with lines of exhaustion around his eyes that his public persona never showed. Elara Vance, he said. 27 years old. Medical records clerk at St. Catherine's Hospital. Mother deceased. Father unknown. One brother, Marcus, is currently in long-term care following an industrial accident 18 months ago. You visit him every Sunday. You're 3 months behind on his treatment payments, and approximately 4 months away from personal bankruptcy. Elara's blood turned to ice. How do you know that? I know everything about everyone in that room. Cassian took a slow sip of his whiskey. It's how I survive. But you're interesting. You were invited by accident, which means you have no connection to anyone who could harm me. You're desperate but not broken. And you handled yourself tonight with a kind of dignity that most people in this city have surgically removed. Get to the point. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost impossibly, like a smile. I need a fiancé. Not a real one. I have no interest in marriage. But I need someone to play the role convincingly for 6 weeks. Why? My mother, Donna Isabetta, has decided it's time for me to settle down. She's parading potential brides through my life like it's a Renaissance court, and every single one of them is a security risk dressed in designer labels. More importantly, I'm in the final stages of a merger that requires stability. A personal life that doesn't look like a tabloid minefield. Elara stared at him. So you need a fake fiancé to fool your mother and impress your investors? Among other things. The engagement will last 6 weeks, the duration of the merger negotiations. After that, we'll stage an amicable separation. You'll be seen as the one who walked away, which will protect your reputation. And what do I get out of this insanity? Cassian set down his whiskey. $60,000. $10,000 per week. Enough to clear your brother's medical debts and give you a fresh start. The number hit Elara like a physical blow. $60,000. It was more money than she'd ever seen in one place. More than she made in 2 years of filing paperwork and fielding insurance calls. This is a joke, she heard herself say. This has to be a joke. I don't joke. Ask anyone. You're asking me to lie. To deceive your mother, your business partners. I'm asking you to act. Cassian leaned forward, his dark eyes pinning her in place. For 6 weeks, you'll wear expensive clothes, attend exclusive events, and pretend to be in love with me. In exchange, I'll erase your debts and ensure that no one in that ballroom ever looks at you as prey again. Elara thought of Marcus, lying in that hospital bed, his eyes vacant from pain and medication. She thought of the collection notices piling up in her mailbox like accusations. She thought of the way Vivienne Ashworth had looked at her, like she was something to be scraped off the bottom of a shoe. There have to be rules, she said slowly, and the words felt like stepping off a cliff. Of course, this is a business arrangement. Physical intimacy will be performed for appearances only, nothing beyond what's necessary for the public eye. You'll have your own quarters in my residence, and at the end of 6 weeks, you'll walk away with no strings attached. What if your mother doesn't believe us? Cassian's expression darkened slightly. Then we'll both have a problem. But I'm very good at making people believe what I want them to believe. And I suspect. He steadied her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. You are too. You've been invisible your whole life, haven't you? Hiding in plain sight. Playing the role others expect. It was an observation that cut too close to the bone. I need time to think, she said. You have until midnight. Cassian glanced at his watch. 43 minutes. After that, the window closes, and you go back to your life. Such as it is. And if I say yes, then tomorrow, your transformation begins. He rose, straightening his jacket. Once again the untouchable mogul. I'll have a car waiting outside your apartment at 9 a.m. Don't be late. I have zero tolerance for lateness. He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at her over his shoulder. One more thing. The moment you agree, you're mine. Not romantically, contractually. You don't speak to the press. You don't discuss our arrangement with anyone. And you don't leave my sight without permission. In exchange, you'll have my full protection. And believe me when I tell you. His voice dropped, shadows pooling in his eyes. In this city, there is nothing more valuable than my protection. He left her alone in that amber-lit room with a cooling glass of whiskey, and 42 minutes to decide her fate. Elara closed her eyes. $60,000. 6 weeks. One lie that might just set her free. At 11:58 p.m., she walked out of the private bar and found Cassian waiting by the elevator. Without a word, she extended her hand. He took it. The deal was sealed. Would you like me to describe the specific look of Elara's transformation outfit in the next chapter? The car arrived at exactly 9 a.m. A black Maybach that looked obscenely expensive, even parked on Elara's decaying street. Her neighbor's windows flickered with curious faces as she descended the stairs of her walk-up, carrying nothing but her purse and the stubborn set of her jaw. The driver, a silent mountain of a man named Dimitri, opened the door for her, revealing an interior of cream leather and chilled champagne. She ignored the champagne. She was not going to start this day with bubbles clouding her judgment. The car slid through Manhattan like a knife through silk, eventually pulling up to a Fifth Avenue building so exclusive it didn't even have a visible address. Inside, an elevator opened directly into a penthouse that seemed designed to intimidate. All white marble, sharp angles, and abstract art that probably cost more than Elara's entire apartment building. A woman was waiting for her. She was perhaps 50, whippet thin, with silver hair pulled back in a chignon so severe it looked architectural. Her suit was charcoal Chanel, her posture military, and her gaze, when it landed on Elara, held the clinical detachment of a surgeon assessing a particularly challenging case. "You must be the project," she said. "I'm Elara." "I'm Marguerite." She circled Elara slowly, making small sounds of assessment. "Stand up straight, shoulders back." "No, back, not up. You're not a soldier, you're meant to be a queen." "I'm meant to be a fake fiancé," Elara corrected. Marguerite's smile was razor thin. "There's no such thing as fake in this world, girl. There is only convincing and dead. Mr. Moretti hired me to ensure you fall into the former category." She snapped her fingers. "Follow me." The next 4 hours were a masterclass in transformation. First came the clothes. Not shopping, that would be too pedestrian. Instead, racks upon racks of couture had been delivered to the penthouse, arranged by color and occasion like a fabric library. Marguerite moved through them with predatory efficiency, selecting pieces and discarding others with flicks of her wrist. Oscar de la Renta for the charity gala. Valentino for intimate dinners. Dior for daytime appearances. You'll need to look approachable, not severe. She held up a wine-red dress, then tossed it aside with a sound of disgust. "No red. Not after last night. We don't remind people of blood." The dress that finally met Marguerite's approval was midnight blue velvet, cut to skim the body without clinging, with a neckline that suggested rather than revealed. When Elara put it on, when she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The fabric seemed to change her posture, her carriage. She stood taller. The thrift store ghost had vanished. "Better," Marguerite admitted. "Now we fix everything else." Everything else meant hours in a salon chair, her hair trimmed and treated until it fell in glossy waves. It meant a makeup lesson that covered everything from natural daytime to lethal evening. It meant learning to walk in heels that could double as weapons, which, Marguerite informed her casually, they literally could. "The right heel to the instep can disable an attacker for 6 minutes," she said, demonstrating the angle. "Remember that. Is that going to be necessary?" In Cassian Moretti's world, Marguerite's eyes met hers in the mirror. "Everything is necessary. Everything is a weapon, including you." By afternoon, the physical transformation was complete, but Marguerite was just getting started. "Sit," she commanded, gesturing to a dining table that had been set with bewildering precision. 3 forks, 2 knives, 4 glasses, and an array of plates that seemed designed for foods Elara had never heard of. "This is a Moretti family dinner setting. You will learn every piece. You will learn which fork is for the fish course, which glass is for the dessert wine, and which knife you can use to defend yourself if necessary." The dinner knife? The butter knife. The dinner knife is too conspicuous. The butter knife, however. Marguerite demonstrated a quick, vicious motion. Slips between ribs quite cleanly. Elara swallowed hard. The etiquette lessons covered more than silverware. Marguerite drilled her on posture, on the art of the non-answer, and on how to navigate a hostile conversation with a smile that never reached the eyes. In this world, weakness is blood in the water. You never admit you don't know something. You change the subject. You never let an insult land. You redirect it. And you never, ever let them see you flinch. Cassian Moretti's fiancé does not flinch. "I'm not actually his fiancé. You are for the next 6 weeks. And in this world, 6 weeks might as well be eternity." Marguerite leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Let me tell you something, girl. Half the women in Cassian's circle would kill to be where you're standing. Some of them might try to literally kill you for it. The only thing keeping you alive is his name and your spine. So straighten it. By evening, Elara was exhausted in ways she hadn't known were possible. Her feet ached. Her brain was stuffed with rules and protocols, and her reflection in the window was a stranger wearing a $20,000 disguise. Cassian arrived just as the sun was bleeding crimson across the Manhattan skyline. He emerged from the elevator in a charcoal suit, paused, and looked at her. Really looked, for the first time since the party. Something flickered in those dark eyes. Something that might have been approval. "She'll do," he said to Marguerite. "She'll more than do." Marguerite was already gathering her things. She has fire. She just needs to learn how to aim it. After she left, Cassian approached Elara slowly, circling her the way Marguerite had hours before, but with an intensity that felt entirely different. When he stopped in front of her, he was close enough that she could see the faint stubble along his jaw and the shadows beneath his eyes. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like a different person." "Good. That's the point." He reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope, which he handed to her. "The contract. Read it tonight. Sign it tomorrow. And prepare yourself." "For what?" His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Tomorrow, you meet my mother." The way he said mother made it sound less like a family member and more like a final boss. Is she really that terrifying? Cassian didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was softer than she'd yet heard it. "Donna Isabella Moretti has buried 3 husbands and twice as many enemies. She built the foundation of this empire while raising me alone in a country that wanted us dead. There is nothing in this world that frightens her, and everything that frightens her, she destroys." He met Elara's eyes with an intensity that pinned her in place. "Do not lie to her. She can smell lies like a shark smells blood. Instead, tell her the truth, selectively." "What truth?" "That you need the money. That you're not in love with me. That this is a transaction." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "She'll respect the honesty. What she won't tolerate is pretension." Elara clutched the contract envelope like a lifeline. "Any other advice?" "Yes." Cassian turned toward the elevator, his shoulders rigid with tension. "Don't wear red. She hates red." The doors closed behind him, leaving Elara alone in that sterile penthouse with a contract, a closet full of couture, and the growing certainty that she had stepped into something far more dangerous than debt. Should we detail what Donna Isabella's test of the Cobra involves in the next chapter? The Moretti estate was not a home. It was a statement. A Renaissance villa transported brick by brick from Tuscany and rebuilt on a private island in Long Island Sound. As the boat carried Elara across the gray water, she watched it loom larger against the October sky and felt, absurdly, like she was approaching a castle from a fairy tale. The kind of fairy tale with wolves. Cassian stood beside her at the bow, wind snapping at his coat, his profile as unreadable as ever. They hadn't spoken since boarding. He seemed locked in some internal battle, his jaw set, his hands white-knuckled on the railing. "You're nervous," Elara observed. "I don't get nervous. Your knuckles are white." He released the railing deliberately, flexing his fingers. "I don't get nervous," he repeated. "I prepare." There's a difference. The boat docked at a private pier, where a staff member in a crisp uniform waited with an umbrella. The walk to the main house felt endless, past manicured gardens, past a stone fountain featuring some classical figure being torn apart by serpents, past windows that seemed to watch their approach with patient malevolence. The interior of the villa was warm, at least. Fires crackling in massive hearths, tapestries softening ancient walls. But the warmth felt like a trap, like the comfortable temperature of a predator's mouth before the jaws snapped shut. A servant led them to a sunlit conservatory where the air was thick with the perfume of white roses and old money. And there, seated in a high-backed chair like a queen on her throne, was Donna Isabella Moretti. She was smaller than Elara had expected, barely 5 feet, with the delicate bone structure of a bird. Her hair was white and swept back, her face a map of fine lines that only enhanced rather than diminished her presence. She wore black, as she always did. Elara had studied photographs, and around her throat hung a single diamond that could have bought a small country. But it was her eyes that stopped Elara cold, dark as her son's, but with a sharp, ancient intelligence that seemed to pin Elara to the spot like a butterfly to a board. "So," Donna Isabella said, her voice accented with the music of Italy, "this is the girl from the thrift store." Beside her, Elara felt Cassian stiffen. "Mother, I wasn't addressing you." The matriarch's gaze never left Elara. "Come closer, child. My eyes are old. I want to see what my son has chosen." Elara approached on legs that felt like they were made of glass. When she reached the appropriate distance, close enough to be inspected, far enough to be dismissed, she stopped. Donna Isabella studied her the way a jeweler studies a suspect diamond. "You're wearing Dior." "Yes. It suits you. But clothes are costumes. Anyone can wear a costume." She gestured to a chair across from her. "Sit. We'll have tea." Tea arrived. served in antique cups so thin, Elara could see the shadow of her fingers through the porcelain. Donna Isabella poured herself a drink, waving away the hovering servant. "Leave us," she commanded. "All of you, including you, Cassian." "Mother, I don't care what you think. I want to speak with the girl alone." Her eyes flicked to her son, and something passed between them. A silent war waged in the space of a heartbeat. "Go." Cassian's jaw tightened, but he went. The door closed behind him with a sound like a cell locking. Donna Isabella turned back to Elara, and the full weight of her attention was almost physically painful. "Now," the matriarch said, "let us dispense with the performance. You are not in love with my son." It wasn't a question. Elara remembered Cassian's advice. Tell her the truth, selectively. She met the old woman's gaze directly. "No, I'm not. And yet you've agreed to marry him." "I've agreed to pretend to be engaged to him." For 6 weeks, something shifted in Donna Isabella's expression. Not approval, exactly, but a lessening of hostility. "He's paying you." "Yes." "How much?" Elara hesitated. But lies, she'd been told, would be detected. $60,000. For 6 weeks, the matriarch's lips curled faintly. "He's underpaying you." The last woman who tried to infiltrate this family demanded $10 million. "I'm not trying to infiltrate anything. I'm trying to save my brother's life." The words came out sharper than Elara intended. She braced for retaliation, a cutting remark, a dismissal, or a call to have her thrown off the island. Instead, Donna Isabella leaned back in her chair and smiled. "There it is," she said softly. "There's the spine." She set down her teacup with deliberate care. "Let me tell you a story, girl. When I was your age, I was a seamstress in Napoli. I had nothing, not a name, not a fortune, not a future. And then I met a man who offered me an arrangement. A transaction. Pretend to be his wife for 6 months, and he would pay me enough to escape my life forever." Elara's heart hammered. "What happened?" "I married him. For real. We built an empire together. The empire my son now runs." The matriarch's eyes softened with something almost like affection. "I know what it is to make deals with dangerous men. I know what it costs. And I know what it can become if you're strong enough. I'm not looking to marry your son. Neither was I. And yet," she spread her hands, encompassing the villa, the island, and the dynasty. "Here we are." A servant entered with a fresh pot of tea, and the moment was shattered. Donna Isabella's expression shuddered, her vulnerability locked away behind the mask of the matriarch. "You will do," she announced. "For now. But understand this." She fixed Elara with a gaze that could have frozen the sun. "If you hurt my son, I will not merely destroy you. I will erase you. There will be no record that you ever existed. I'm not going to hurt him. Everyone who gets close to him hurts him. It's the price of what he is." Donna Isabella rose, signaling the end of the audience. "The question is whether you have the strength to stay anyway." The door opened. Cassian stepped in, his face a careful mask of neutrality. "Well." His mother walked past him without stopping, trailing her fingers along his cheek in a gesture that seemed almost tender. "She survived the Cobra test," she said. "For now, that's enough." When she was gone, Cassian turned to Elara with something like relief flickering in his eyes. "What did she say to you?" "She told me a story about a seamstress." His expression shifted, surprise, vulnerability, and then a quick retreat into control. "She doesn't tell that story to anyone. She told it to me." For a long moment, Cassian simply looked at her. Then, quietly, "Maybe this will work after all." The club was called Lacuna, a name that meant gap, absence, or something missing. It suited the aesthetic. A black box space in Tribeca where the city's most powerful came to conduct business that couldn't survive daylight. Elara entered on Cassian's arm, wearing a dress that moved like liquid mercury and heels that, per Marguerite's instructions, could puncture a windpipe if necessary. 2 weeks into their arrangement, she was starting to feel almost comfortable in these spaces. Or at least, she was getting better at faking it. The club's interior was all shadows and angles, punctuated by pools of amber light that seemed designed to highlight power while concealing weakness. Music pulsed at a frequency that made conversation both necessary and difficult. "There," Cassian murmured, his lips brushing her ear. "Corner table, don't look directly." Elara didn't look directly. She'd learned that particular skill in her first week, the art of observing without being seen to observe. But in the polished surface of a passing champagne tray, she caught a glimpse of the man in question. He was handsome in the way of classical paintings, all sharp cheekbones and pale eyes, and the kind of golden beauty that seemed almost artificial. He was flanked by 2 men who were very obviously not there for decoration. "Victor Volkov," Cassian said, his voice dropping to something cold and contained. "He wasn't supposed to be here tonight." "Is that a problem?" "It's a provocation." Cassian's arm tightened around her waist. He knows my schedule. He knows where I'll be. He's here to send a message. What message? But before Cassian could answer, Viktor Volkov was rising from his table and crossing the club toward them, with the easy confidence of a man who had never been refused anything in his life. Cassian Moretti. His accent was Russian, softened by years abroad, and sharpened by something that might have been mockery. What a delightful surprise. And this must be... His pale eyes slid to Elara with an intensity that felt like ice water down her spine. The mysterious fiancé. The one from nowhere. The one from Queens, Elara heard herself say. But I suppose that's the same thing to you. Victor's eyebrows rose slightly. She speaks, and with a tongue. How refreshing. He extended a hand toward her. Not to shake, but palm down, in an old-world gesture that expected her to take it like royalty. Elara didn't take it. I don't know who you are, she said coolly. But I know what you're doing, and it's not going to work. The club seemed to freeze. Somewhere, a glass clinked too loudly. Victor's companions shifted, their hands moving toward hidden places beneath their jackets. Victor laughed, a bright, delighted sound that didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, Cassian," he said, withdrawing his hand without offense. "I like her. She has no survival instinct whatsoever, but she has fire. Where did you find this treasure?" "She found me," Cassian said, his voice flat and deadly. "And she's under my protection, which means any interest you have in her would be inadvisable." "Interest?" Victor pressed a hand to his heart in mock offense. "I'm merely paying respects to the future Mrs. Moretti. Surely that's allowed." "Not from you." The two men stared at each other across a distance of inches and miles. Elara could feel the violence coiling in both of them, the history of blood and betrayal that made the air between them crackle with static. "Your father and mine were partners once," Victor said quietly. "Before certain misunderstandings. I had hoped the next generation might repair what the last destroyed. The only thing my father's partnership with yours built was a graveyard." Cassian's voice was ice. "And I have no interest in adding to it." "No." Victor's gaze flickered to Elara, and something in it made her blood run cold. "Then you should be more careful about what you leave exposed. Beautiful things have a way of breaking." He turned and walked away before Cassian could respond, his companions falling into formation behind him. Within moments he was swallowed by the club's shadows. Cassian stood rigid as stone, barely breathing. "He threatened me," Elara said. "It wasn't a question." "Yes. Why? I'm nothing to him. I'm nothing in this world." Cassian finally looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath catch. Not just anger, fear, real, genuine fear. "You're nothing," he said. "Not anymore. The moment I pulled you onto my lap, you became the most dangerous kind of weapon. Leverage. Volkov sees that, and he will use it if he can. Then end the contract. Let me go. I'll disappear. It's too late for that." Cassian's hand came up to cup her cheek, and for the first time, the gesture felt less like a performance and more like something genuine. "You're in this now. The only way out is through." Elara swallowed. "And if we don't make it through, then we don't make it." His thumb traced her cheekbone, tender and terrifying. "But I will burn this city to the ground before I let him touch you." "That's not a promise. That's a prophecy." They left the club through a private exit, Dmitri materializing from the shadows to escort them to the waiting car. But Elara could feel it now, the crosshairs settling on her back, the countdown beginning towards something violent and inevitable. She was no longer invisible, and that meant she was no longer safe. "Would you like me to reveal what happened between the Moretti and Volkov families in the next chapter?" 3 in the morning. The Moretti penthouse was silent, save for the whisper of the city far below. Elara couldn't sleep, hadn't been able to since Viktor Volkov's pale eyes had promised her destruction with a smile. She found Cassian in the study, silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of whiskey glowing amber in his hand. He didn't turn when she entered, but she knew he knew she was there. Men like Cassian Moretti always knew when the air changed around them. "You should be sleeping," he said. "So should you." "I don't sleep." He took a long drink. "Not well anyway, not for years." Elara moved to stand beside him, looking out at the constellation of lights that was Manhattan at night. "Tell me about Volkov. You don't want to know. I'm his target now. I need to know." A muscle ticked in Cassian's jaw. For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't answer, that the walls he'd built would prove impenetrable. Then he spoke, his voice low and rough. "Viktor Volkov, Viktor's father, was my father's partner in the 70s. They built the shipping routes together, the legal ones and the other kind. For a while, it worked. 2 families, 2 empires, 1 kingdom. What happened? My mother happened." Cassian's lips curved in a smile that held no warmth. "She came from nothing, as I told you. But she had vision. She saw what the partnership was becoming. The blood, the bodies, the way my father was changing. She wanted out. She convinced my father to go legitimate, and Volkov didn't like that. Volkov considered it betrayal. The partnership dissolved. My father tried to walk away cleanly, but you don't walk away from men like Viktor Volkov. Not without consequences. His hand tightened on the whiskey glass. My father was killed when I was 12. Shot in the back in our own garage. They made it look like a robbery, but everyone knew. Everyone knew. His voice cracked, just barely. The police investigation went nowhere. The witnesses disappeared. And Viktor Volkov sent flowers to the funeral. Elara felt sick. I'm sorry. Don't be. Sorry doesn't change anything. Cassian drained his glass and set it down with deliberate control. My mother took over after that. She made the business fully legitimate and built the empire you see today. But she never forgave, and she never forgot. Neither have I. So Viktor is finishing what his father started. The old man is dying. Cancer, they say. Though I suspect it's something slower. Poison, maybe. Viktor made enemies of his own. But before he goes, he wants to see the Morettis destroyed. And Viktor is the instrument of that destruction. He turned to look at her finally, and in the dim light, she could see the exhaustion behind his eyes. The weight of decades of vigilance, of waiting for a blow that never stopped coming. You asked why I don't sleep, he said. That's why. Because every night, I wonder if this is the night they come for what's left of my family. For my mother. For me. His gaze held hers. And now, for you. I'm not your family. You're wearing my ring. He reached out, his fingers brushing the diamond band that had appeared on her hand 2 weeks ago. Another prop in their elaborate theater. In this world, that makes you mine. For better or worse. The weight of the ring suddenly felt different. Heavier. More real. I didn't ask for this, Elara said quietly. Neither did I. His hand dropped. But here we are. And the only way any of us survives is if we trust each other. You barely know me. I know enough. His eyes searched her face. I know you didn't run when Volkov threatened you. I know you stood up to my mother, which no one does. I know you're here at 3 in the morning because you couldn't sleep either. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of him. I know you're scared. And I know you're staying anyway. Elara's heart was a drum in her chest. Why do you care? I'm just a contract. A transaction. Maybe. His voice dropped to a whisper. Or maybe I stopped thinking of you that way weeks ago. The air between them was charged with electricity. For one suspended moment, Elara thought he might kiss her. Thought she might let him. Thought everything might change. Then his phone buzzed, shattering the spell. Cassian stepped back, his expression hardening as he checked the screen. Whatever he saw made the color drain from his face. Get dressed, he said. Something's happened. What? Your apartment. His voice was ice and fire. Someone's been there. The engagement was made official at the Moretti Foundation's annual charity gala, a glittering affair at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where the guest list read like a who's who of power, and the theme was, fittingly, illusions. Everyone wore masks. Elara's was crafted from black lace and crystal, designed to obscure her features while enhancing her eyes. Her gown was white silk that moved like water, and around her throat hung a diamond necklace that had once belonged to Cassian's grandmother. You look like a ghost, he murmured as they prepared to make their entrance. Is that a compliment or a warning? Both. His mask was simpler, black leather, stark against his white shirt, but somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. Stay close to me tonight. Don't go anywhere alone. And if you see anyone who doesn't belong, I'll signal you. He nodded. They'd developed a system in the weeks since Volkov's threat. Subtle touches that meant different things. A hand on his arm meant, I'm fine. A touch to her own necklace meant I see something. And a grip on his lapel meant, get me out. They entered the gala to applause and flashbulbs, the announcement of their engagement rippling through the crowd like a stone hitting water. Elara smiled and waved and played the role of dazzled fiancé while internally cataloging every face, every exit, and every potential threat. The training was paying off. She could spot the bodyguards now, the ones who belonged and the ones who didn't. She could read the room's dynamics, the shifting allegiances, and the whispered transactions happening in corners. But she couldn't have predicted what happened next. Donna Isabetta materialized at her elbow, resplendent in black velvet and diamonds, her mask a simple domino that somehow made her look like a vengeful spirit. Come with me, the matriarch said quietly. There's something you need to see. Elara glanced at Cassian, but he was across the room, deep in conversation with a group of investors. She gave his mother a questioning look. It can't wait, Donna Isabetta said. And it can't involve him. Not yet. Against every instinct, Elara followed. They moved through a private door, down a corridor lined with classical paintings, and into a small antechamber where a woman was waiting. She was young, maybe Elara's age, with red hair, and wide, frightened eyes. Her dress was cheap, her mask was absent, and she was clutching a folder to her chest like a shield. "Tell her," Donna Isabetta commanded. The woman swallowed. "My name is Katya. I worked for Viktor Volkov. As a secretary. I've been passing information to Mrs. Moretti for 3 months." Elara's blood chilled. "You're a spy." "I'm a survivor." Katya's voice shook. "Volkov doesn't let people leave his organization. The only way out is death. Or this. But I've seen things. I've heard things." She thrust the folder toward Elara. "He's planning something tonight. Here. At this gala." "What kind of something?" "An assassination attempt. Not on Cassian, on you." The words hit Elara like a physical blow. "Me? Why?" "Because you're the only way to hurt him without starting a war." Katya's eyes filled with tears. "Volkov knows what you mean to Cassian. He's known from the beginning. This whole engagement, he's been watching, waiting for the perfect moment. And tonight, when everyone's distracted by masks and champagne, he'll strike." Elara finished. Donna Isabetta's hand closed on her arm. "Now you understand why this couldn't wait. And why can't Cassian know? Not yet. He'll tear this place apart looking for threats, and that's exactly what Volkov wants. The chaos is part of the plan. So what do we do?" The matriarch's eyes glittered behind her mask. "We spring the trap first, and we do it the Moretti way." Over the next hour, Elara moved through the gala like a woman marked for death, because she was. But she moved with purpose now, following Donna Isabetta's instructions, identifying the infiltrators hidden among the waitstaff, and signaling the Moretti security team through a series of codes she'd been taught just minutes before. When Volkov's men finally made their move, they found their targets missing, and their exits blocked. The takedown was surgical, silent, and invisible to the hundreds of guests still dancing beneath the museum's vaulted ceilings. Cassian found her afterward, his face pale with fury. "You could have been killed." "I wasn't. You should have told me." "Your mother said." "My mother," he spat, "is not the one who promised to protect you." "No," Elara said quietly. "But she's the one who taught me to protect myself." She watched the anger war with something else in his eyes. Admiration, maybe, or something deeper. Something that terrified them both. "This isn't over," he said finally. "Volkov failed tonight, but he'll try again. And again. Until one of us is dead. Then we end it," Elara said. "Before he has the chance." The attack on her apartment came 3 days later. Elara wasn't there, hadn't been there since the night Cassian first told her about Volkov. But Mrs. Chen, her elderly neighbor, was. She'd been feeding Elara's plants, keeping an eye on things. She was found unconscious by the mailboxes, a bruise blooming across her temple. The apartment itself was destroyed, furniture overturned, walls spray-painted with messages that made Elara's stomach turn. "We see you. We'll take you. You're nothing." Cassian's team swept the scene while Elara stood frozen in the doorway, looking at the ruins of her former life. "Your brother," Dmitri said quietly. "He's been moved. Secure facility upstate. He's safe." She nodded, but she couldn't speak. This was real. This was happening. She wasn't playing a role anymore. She was living it, whether she wanted to or not. Cassian found her there, still frozen, and without a word, he wrapped his arms around her and held her. Not for cameras, not for show. Just because she was shaking, and he was solid, and sometimes that was enough. "I'm sorry," he murmured into her hair. "I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. Everything is my fault." He pulled back, his hands cupping her face. "I brought you into this world. I painted a target on your back. Every piece of damage he does, that's on me. Then help me finish it." His eyes searched hers. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm done being bait. I'm done being protected. I want to fight." She gripped his lapels, and he recognized the signal. But this time, it didn't mean get me out. It meant something else entirely. "Teach me. Train me. Make me a weapon, and then let's use me to take him down." For a long moment, Cassian simply stared at her. Then slowly, a smile spread across his face, the first real smile she'd ever seen from him. "Marguerite was right," he said. "You do have fire. Then let's burn it all down." The Moretti shipping docks at midnight were a labyrinth of containers and shadows. This was where it would end, where Elara would prove, once and for all, that she was no longer a pawn to be sacrificed. The plan was simple. Draw Volkov's men out using intelligence from Katya's network, then neutralize them before they could report back. A surgical strike that would cripple his operation and send a message that the Morettis were done playing defense. Elara was positioned in a sniper's nest overlooking the main exchange point, wearing black tactical gear that felt like armor. Marguerite's final gift, a woman's combat suit, designed to move silently and strike without warning. Through her scope, she watched Cassian approach the meeting point, flanked by Dmitri and 2 other guards. He moved with the easy confidence of a man walking into a trap he intended to spring. The Volkov men emerged from the shadows, 6 of them, heavily armed, led by a Lieutenant Elara recognized from Katya's photographs. The exchange began. Words she couldn't hear, gestures she could only interpret. But something was wrong. The lieutenant kept glancing at a point behind Cassian, a point where no one should be. Elara swept her scope left and felt her blood freeze. There, hidden behind a container, was a 7th man, with a rifle, aimed directly at the back of Cassian's head. She didn't think, she acted. The shot rang out across the docks, her shot, and the hidden assassin crumpled. Chaos erupted below as both sides realized the game had changed. Elara was already moving, descending from her perch, weapon raised. She'd trained for this, drilled for this, prepared for this. But training couldn't replicate the reality of bodies falling, of bullets singing past her head, or of the acrid stench of gunpowder and fear. She found Cassian in the center of the firefight, his arm bleeding from a graze, his expression a mask of controlled fury. When he saw her standing amid the chaos, alive and fighting, something broke open in his eyes. "You saved my life," he said. "We can be amazed by it later." She fired past his shoulder, dropping another attacker. "Right now, we need to move." They fought their way to the extraction point together, a dance of violence and trust, each covering the other's blind spots. By the time Dmitri got them into the armored SUV, Elara was covered in other people's blood and shaking with adrenaline. Cassian pulled her close in the back seat, his hands running over her body, checking for wounds. "I'm okay," she said. "I'm okay. You shouldn't have been there. You'd be dead if I weren't." He stopped, his hands cupping her face, his forehead pressed to hers. "I know." His voice was raw. "I know, and I don't know how to." She kissed him. It wasn't strategic, wasn't planned, and wasn't part of any contract or performance. It was instinct and adrenaline, and something that had been building for weeks. He kissed her back with a desperation that told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't fake anymore. Maybe it never had been. 6 weeks ended on a Tuesday. Elara woke in Cassian's bed, their bed now, though neither of them had officially acknowledged it, to find him sitting on the edge, holding the contract. "It's over," he said quietly. "The merger closed yesterday. My mother has officially stopped her matchmaking campaign. Volkov is in federal custody awaiting trial." He turned to look at her. "You fulfilled every term. The money's been transferred. Your brother's treatment is fully funded for the next decade." Elara sat up slowly. "So this is it." "It's supposed to be." He set the contract down and reached for her hand. "The deal was 6 weeks. We agreed. You get to walk away now, go back to your life, and pretend none of this happened. Is that what you want?" He laughed. A raw, honest sound. "What I want has nothing to do with contracts or deals or arrangements. What I want," he pulled her close, his lips brushing her forehead. "What I want is to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. What I want is to introduce you at every gala, as my partner, my equal, my queen. What I want is to burn that contract and never speak of transactions between us again." Elara's heart was pounding. "That's a lot of want. I have a lot of years to make up for." His eyes met hers, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "Stay, not because I'm paying you, not because you need my protection. Stay because I love you. And I hope, you might love me too." She looked at him. This man of shadows and steel, this king of a dark empire, this wounded soul who had pulled her onto his lap and changed her life forever. Then she picked up the contract and tore it in half. "I'm not staying because you ask me to," she said. "I'm staying because I choose to." There's a difference. The smile that broke across his face was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "Yes," Cassian Moretti agreed, pulling her into his arms. "There is." 1 year later, the wedding was held at the Moretti estate on a crisp October afternoon. Donna Isabella wept openly, which no one had ever seen before, and would never see again. Elara walked down the aisle in a gown that cost more than her old apartment building, but more importantly, she walked with her brother Marcus on her arm, fully recovered, beaming with pride. At the altar, Cassian waited. He wasn't wearing his armor anymore. Just a man, just a heart, just a promise. "You know," Elara whispered as she reached him, "I was wearing a $20 dress when you first pulled me onto your lap. I remember." His eyes sparkled. "I also remember thinking you were the most dangerous woman in that room. I was nobody. You were nobody." He took her hands. "You were just waiting to be seen." And there, in front of gods and criminals and one very satisfied matriarch, Elara Vance became Elara Moretti. Not because a contract demanded it, but because love, in the end, was the only deal worth making. Would you like me to write a bonus chapter revealing what happened to Viktor Volkov after his imprisonment? Should I develop a sequel exploring Elara's new role as the Queen of the Moretti Empire? The end.